Well, hey, everyone. Welcome to the Unshaken Faith Christmas party or online Christmas party tonight. I want to acknowledge that for those faithful listeners to our Unshaken Faith podcast, we kind of came to an abrupt end of our season this past couple of months ago. And we didn't really announce that we were going on break, but we want to assure you that we're coming back in January with all new episodes and a new season. But the reason we decided to break early when we did was because honestly, we just had a lot going on. We're both we stay at home, yes, moms, but we also travel and do some things. But we're homeschool moms and we're writing books and we're working on our podcast. We've got all kinds of stuff going on. So we're actually going to share with you all some of the things that we had going on that caused us to have to kind of abruptly end that season. But I want to just take care of a little bit of housekeeping as we are going to be doing a lot of giveaways tonight. So if you want to enter for one of the giveaways, all you have to do is leave a comment. So if you leave a comment on Natasha's Facebook page, my Facebook page, or on YouTube, you are entered to win one of the giveaways. So that is how you're going to do that. And so we're going to be giving away some books. We're going to be giving away a couple of other little presents. And then at the end, we're going to be giving away some free tickets to upcoming Unshaken Conference dates that we're going to announce tonight. So we're so excited. We hope that you'll stay tuned all throughout the broadcast so that you can have a chance to win one of these great prizes. If you win a prize, all you have to do to receive your gift is email contact@alisachilders.com with the address where you would like the gift sent. And we will not probably get that to you in time for Christmas, but it'll be a nice little post-Christmas gift. So if you want to enter for one of the giveaways, you can just start right now by leaving a comment. You leave a comment, you're entered. And then we also want you to go ahead and start putting in your questions. We're going to end this broadcast with a live Q&A. You can ask us anything you want to ask us. We just ask that you write the word question before your question, and that's how we're going to sort through and find all the questions at the end. But go ahead and start putting those in now. And hey, you get a little double thing there because you leave a question and that enters you for a giveaway, but we also might answer your question. So I promised that we would share what has been keeping us busy. So Natasha, what is keeping you busy right now?
Well, the biggest thing for me that's keeping me busy is that I'm working on a new book. So my book is due in the end of May. I should know exactly when that is. But about the end of May, I have to turn it into the publisher, and then it's going to come out at the beginning of 2025. So I haven't said too much about it anywhere because I can't tell you what it's about. But I'll say, generally speaking, it is about Christian engagement with culture, talking about some very controversial topics, not just with culture, but also within the body of Christ. And so it's a little slow moving so far with how I'm able to get some momentum. But that's because it's so difficult to write, I think. And so I think it's an important book, but it's also one that is challenging. And so I've been working hard on that and kind of getting that going. The other thing that I've been working on is a couple of episodes that I did with a gentleman named Andy White. And he is a Christian who has been a public school principal for the last 19 years. And we did a whole bunch of research and put together 2 in-depth episodes on what Christians really need to know about the public education system. So if that's of interest to you, and I hope that it's of interest to most Christians, no matter what season of life you're in, because we need to know what's going on out there. There are 2 in-depth profiles on the public education system that you can find on my podcast, the Natasha Crain podcast. And so we put a lot of effort into that, and I hope that it will be helpful for a lot of people.
That's
So
awesome.
those are the big things that I've been working on. But Alisa, I want to hear about
but
you.
also you've got kids in soccer and all sorts of music lessons and homeschool and
Yes,
all that stuff.
all the stuff that's going on with the kids. Yeah, that's like the foundational stuff. That's the stuff that has to come first. But then on top of
That's
that,
right.
try to do these things. That's what really you and I
That's
are like,
awesome.
oh my gosh, we need to go on hiatus for a little bit before we, start up again.
It just,
So
it just becomes too much. At some point, I think it's hard to do that, especially when you've got momentum going on something. But what I try to do is model what I give advice to other people to do, which is prioritize and then let things go as you have to let them go. There's probably more I could be doing on social media, but I just have to let that go because I don't want my family to suffer. I don't want my kids to suffer. So we have to prioritize those things. And I'm so sorry that the Unshaken Faith podcast was one of those things that had to drop off a little bit, but we're going to be coming back strong. But I will say, you mentioned Andy. I've already seen Andy comment, so he's on the stream tonight. And
I saw that.
actually
Hey, Andy.
do know. Yeah, hi, Andy. I do know what your book is about, and it is going to be amazing. You guys are, oh my goodness, I just predict it's going to be incredibly helpful for the body of Christ, especially with our current cultural climate. So, basically what I have going on is, all the stuff at home, like we talked about with, family stuff and kid stuff. But I also just finished up a book that's coming out on January 30th. And I'm really excited about this book. And I want to let everybody know that you can actually pre-order it right now. So it's called The Deconstruction of Christianity, What It Is, Why It's Destructive, and How to Respond. And I co-wrote this book with our mutual friend, Tim Barnett of Red Pen Logic, and it's really addressing the deconstruction movement. So this is not the book you're going to give to your friend who's deconstructing. It's the book you're going to give to their friends, their family members, their pastors, their parents. We really wrote this book to give the body of Christ a definitive sort of complete resource to help them understand what's happening to their loved ones who are in deconstruction, and then give advice really on how to engage in those relationships. And so one of the things I'm really excited about is that if you pre-order the book, then you can go to the deconstructionofchristianity.com and fill out the form, put in your receipt number of wherever you ordered the book, and then you're going to get an email back immediately with one chapter early and free. And that's our advice chapter. And that's really answering the number one question that I get asked every time I go out and speak is, how do I engage relationally with the people in my life who are in deconstruction? So we took a whole chapter to answer that question, and we thought it was so important. We didn't want you to have to wait until the book comes out. So if you pre-order the book and you fill out the form on the deconstructionofchristianity.com, you will get an email with that chapter like right now. You could read it like before this live stream is over. Don't do that. Stay with us because you don't want to miss the giveaways, but you will get it immediately. And then you also, with that pre-order bonus, will get 60 days access to the audiobook for free. And that is a book that Tim and I both read. We voiced it ourselves. And so we're really excited about that. So again, that's the deconstructionofchristianity.com. And you can get that book anywhere books are sold. You can already pre-order that. So that's one thing that I've been really busy with, is just trying to, keep up with the promo for that. There's a lot of people don't realize how much is involved with a book launch. There's articles to write. There's tons of extra interviews to do. There's all sorts of stuff that's involved with that makes it kind of a stressful time. So that's been going on. And then, of course, keeping up with my own podcast. And then my travel schedule for fall was insane. It was just crazy. I was gone for about 3 weeks straight in October. Thankfully, my daughter got to go with me for a lot of that, but it was just crazy. I just couldn't. I was like, I literally didn't even, Natasha, have a day where we could be like, let's record this, because it was just, I was all over the place. So we just had to let it go. But I'm really glad that we're going to be coming back in January.
Wasn't that when we were recording and you were literally trying to have like better sound in a hotel room? You were in a bed, literally with a sheet over your head like this, and you're like, "Does this sound okay?"
Yeah. And the funny
Like,
thing
it
is
sounds
that
great.
we, even though our Unshaken Faith podcast is not on video, we can still see each other when we're recording. So yeah,
Right.
I was under this huge blanket in a hotel room trying to like block out the echoey noise, and I'm just, in there. And I took a screenshot, or I think my husband took a screenshot of it.
If people only knew what we were doing or what we looked like when we were actually recording some of these episodes.
I know.
Because some people have said, "Hey, can you put this on YouTube? Can you do video?" And we're like, "No, that's a whole other level of like
It's a
preparation that
whole, yeah.
we
It's a whole
we're
day.
not
When
ready
you
for
have
that.
to be on
Yeah.
camera, it's like a whole day. I mean, I wish that I could be like some of these people that just, roll out of bed in the morning with their hair sticking straight
Right.
up. And I'm not ready to share that much of my life with with all of you just yet. I mean, I try not to be too glammed up all the time, but yeah, I'm just not ready to roll out of bed and turn the camera on. I don't know. That's just
Yeah,
me. But
exactly.
anyway. All right. So what you got for us, Natasha?
Well, and I just want to add on your book, I was telling Lisa before we got on that I've read half of it because I got an early copy and then I had to pause because, well, Christmas, everything that's going on. But it's so good, you guys. Like I'm not just saying that because we're on this podcast together. It is so good. I've read about the first half of it. It's just so clear and methodical in how it's laid out. And the tone is amazing. It's just,
Thank
you
you.
guys are definitely going to want to get this. And I was also telling Lisa I got to get her and Tim on my podcast and interview them soon. So hopefully we can do that in January. Well, if you are a regular listener to the podcast, you know that we always do announcements, and usually those announcements have something to do with our Unshaken conferences. Either we just got done with one or we're going to have one coming up. So we're always talking about them. If you are new to this and you're saying, what is an Unshaken conference? Well, this is the conference that Alisa and I do with Frank Turek. We've done 4 of them in 2023, and we're just basically trying to equip and encourage the body of Christ to stand firm in a really challenging culture today. And they went so well. We had so much great feedback, and so many people were saying, hey, come to our city. We want you to bring it here, that we decided to go on for 4 more dates in 2024. So we announced that we were going to do that a few weeks back, but we did not tell you where we're going to be and when we're going to be. And we're going to tell you for the first time right now the next 2
Yay.
dates. So without further ado, the next date that we're going to be doing, do we have a drum roll? Alisa, can you simulate a drum roll or
Let me see. I've got
something?
some sounds here, but they're not marked. So let's just see what happens.
Okay, any
Okay,
sound. Let's
got
see.
it. All right, let's see. Oh, I've got the thong down. Oh, it's not that. Okay.
The podcast. Oh,
Maybe
I like
we'll
it.
do this as we say our winners. Yeah.
Okay. See, this is the beauty of the live stream. We're figuring this out in live time.
I got that.
Okay. That's the background
I don't know
music
what
for the
that is.
announcement.
Yeah.
I like it. Here it is. The next date that we're doing is March 9th in the Detroit, Michigan area. So technically, it's Taylor, Michigan, and just outside Detroit, and it's at Metro City Church. We are so excited to be there. We are so appreciative of you, Metro City Church. If you're watching, just the support and the enthusiasm that you're giving us for the conference. We cannot wait to be there. I've actually never been to Michigan before. So we are going to experience Michigan in March. I bet it's going to be a little bit cold. I think I can handle it. It's going to be great. We're very excited. So the tickets are not yet on sale. They're going to go on sale in January. So you can't get them yet. But there are 2 things I want to mention. Number 1, we are actually going to give away 2 tickets to both of the dates that we're announcing tonight on this live stream. So if you can be in Detroit on March 9th, then go ahead and put into the comments wherever you're watching. If it's on my Facebook, Alisa's Facebook, or Alisa's YouTube, put into the comments, I want Detroit tickets. You have to use the language so that we know that that's what you're looking for, and that's what we're going to search through in order to find a winner later. So I want Detroit tickets, and we're going to draw for 2 tickets later on in this show. And also, I just want to remind you guys that yes, we don't have physical tickets that you can buy yet, but you can still give them for Christmas presents, because what we do in our family for things like this, we make like a little printout, and you can say something like this: Merry Christmas. I love you so much that I'm going to take you to the Unshaken Conference, March 9th in Detroit at Metro City Church. And I'm sure the recipient will be overjoyed and thrilled to get those tickets. So you can absolutely still give them as a Christmas present. Keep that in mind. And Alisa has our next date.
I do. So the second event, if you're all ready, I don't have a drum roll, but we are going to be in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, people. Yes. So we're going to be in Pennsylvania at Christ Church at Grove Farm, which is located in the Pittsburgh area. So we'll be there on May 18th. So again, just a huge thank you to Christ Church at Grove Farm for hosting us, and also want to acknowledge a special thanks to Watermark Classical Academy and Arise Classical Academy, who was so enthusiastic and supportive for bringing the conference there. So we're so excited. And again, just like the other date, if you want to come to the Unshaken Conference in Pennsylvania, just write in the comments, because we're going to be doing a giveaway of 2 tickets later. What is it? I want Pennsylvania tickets, right?
That's a
Natasha,
long word
that's
to write. How about I want Pittsburgh tickets? Maybe that.
Pittsburgh. Okay. I guess that must be like, yeah. Okay.
It's the
I
Pittsburgh
want
area. Yeah.
Pittsburgh tickets. I want Pittsburgh tickets. Maybe we'll take Pennsylvania as well, but just put Pittsburgh in there to keep it simple. And then at the end of the live stream, we are going to go ahead and do that giveaway. Okay, now, if this was a normal Unshaken Faith podcast episode, at this point, we would be breaking down some kind of theological or cultural question. But on today's live stream, we just want to have fun. So we have a few Christmas-themed questions that we're going to ask each other, and then we're going to bust some Christmas myths before we go on to take your questions live, because it really wouldn't be an Unshaken Faith live stream, Christmas live stream without a little bit of Christmas Karens wanting to speak to the manager of, the misconceptions of Christmas. So we're just gonna be Debbie Downers tonight. We're gonna just, whatever joy you have in your heart about certain Christmas facts, we're just gonna erase that joy, and we're going to tell you about some Christmas myths and what the truths are. So, all right, first question then is this. Natasha, what was your most memorable childhood Christmas gift?
That is easy. There is one that stands out to me more than any other. I don't know if it was 7th grade or 8th grade, but basically junior high time frame. And I had asked my parents many times if I could have a phone in my room. Now, this is long before cell phones, so no one is having their own personal phones at this time. And my parents had said, absolutely not. You're not getting a phone. We don't need this. You can use the one that's, out here in the living room, whatever. Okay, so that Christmas, much to my huge surprise, I got a giant cordless phone. I mean, I can still picture it in my head. It was literally like this big. It had an antenna on the top of it, but that was just what was normal then, except cordless was even cooler. I don't think a lot of people even had cordless phones in their houses at the time. This sounds like we're so old. I don't feel that old, but this is making me feel really old. But I mean, the joy and excitement I felt inside that I was going to have my own cordless phone in my room was almost too much to bear. I still remember that feeling when I opened it up and saw the cordless phone. So that has to be the most memorable thing. It blows my mind that now every kid pretty much has a cell phone and they don't think anything of it. They don't understand what it was like to walk to school in the snow like we did.
Wow, I know. Back in my day.
Back in the day, yeah.
Yes.
So how about you, Alisa? What do you remember the most?
My most memorable Christmas gift is really a standout because I was too young, I think, to have known about what it was. I think it was just like maybe 3 or 4 when I received this gift, but it was my absolute favorite gift. I used it for years and years and years, and I even have a little video of me opening up the gift. And it was, I looked it up because I wanted to know what it was called, but we called it Moo Moo Cow. And what it was a toy cow that you actually had little udders, and you would actually pull on the udders and you could milk this toy cow, and like this white liquid would come out. And so I actually looked it up, and it's the Kenner Milky Marvelous Milking Dairy Cow. Milky the Marvelous Milking Cow. And
did you have to fill it up with the liquid? I mean, how did that?
Yes.
Oh, no.
And so, like she drinks water and then moos and then gives milk. And so I even remember at a certain point, I think I just started filling her, like making my own kind of fake milk, or maybe I even put real milk in her. I don't know. But I just thought it was the coolest thing. And I got so much use out of that. And I'm so sad that I don't have it anymore because I could buy it on eBay for $500, but I don't think I'm going to be doing that. So
do you know how many kids probably filled that up with milk and just left it sitting there to just get disgusting and smell horrible?
I probably did that. That's probably why we don't have it anymore. It probably stunk. So that was it. Milky the Marvelous Milking Cow. Yeah.
That is very memorable. I love it. Next question, Alisa. What is your biggest Christmas pet peeve? Like, is there something that you wish would just go away and die from the whole Christmas season?
Well, I feel like I said this at our last year's live stream, and I feel really bad because I feel like this is controversial and it's going to absolutely, hurt people's feelings. But that is that I really am bothered by matching family Christmas pajamas. I'm just saying it like it just bothers me. It bothers me. Why do we have to match?
What is it that bothers you, though? Like, find a feeling, identify it, dig deep. What?
It's therapy. We're in therapy now.
Yes. What is it that really bothers you? You see it. You have a feeling. What is that?
I don't know, maybe it's the uniformity. It's like, I don't know, maybe that's the postmodern person in me that's like, I want my individuality. I don't want to have to match all these other people, even though they're my family. I don't know. Maybe it's the hippie in me, but it also feels, you know what it is? I think it's an offshoot of a bigger pet peeve that I have, and that's that um, there's this expectation to do all these really extravagant and a lot of times expensive new Christmas traditions. Like, do you remember when Elf on the Shelf kind of became a big thing a few years ago? The
Oh, that's what I was gonna
pressure.
talk about next.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Well, I'll
Yes.
save that for you. I'll save that for you. But
Go
my
you
general
can
one
go.
would be just this pressure to do all the new things and go buy the new thing, and every day you got to move the thing because, of course that is kind of fun. I do have fun with the Elf on the Shelf. But anyway, what's your pet peeve? Is it Elf on the Shelf?
I've gotta before we alienate any listeners because you don't like the jammies, I'm gonna say I love the matching Christmas jammies, so
Yeah.
no one cut us
Yeah,
off,
she
no one
does it.
cancel
You
us
do it.
because
Yeah.
we do, but here's the thing, we're trying to be a little more economical about it, so we've used the same ones for, like, the last couple of years, and I have to admit, I actually went on Amazon because I was like, "You know what? We should upgrade the jammies this year because the kids have grown a lot." I started looking at them, and they're so expensive. I mean, you can't get,
Yeah.
like, cheap matching jammies, and so it's a big investment. So, yeah, I like the jammies, but I don't like how expensive they are. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'd have to say it's the Elf on the Shelf thing. I just
Mm.
don't get that. And I remember that somebody at my daughter's school when she was littler, they were doing it in their family, and my daughter didn't know what it was. And it was the whole thing about shame. How can you possibly not know? Why does your family not do it? I mean, what's the deal?
Yeah.
It was
What's
literally
wrong
like
with you?
people were offended. Yeah, like what are
Yeah.
you doing? And so I just hate the thing. I don't see any point. There's so much we have to do in the Christmas season, or we feel like
Hmm.
we have to do. The last thing I need to do is move an elf around the room. Don't need to do that. Like I just don't need to do that.
Hmm.
So, but it sounds like you do that.
I
So we kind of
actually
we
do
each
because
participate in the other's pet peeve, and it's
yeah.
okay. We
Yeah.
we can still get along,
Yes, we
and
can. We can agree to
we
disagree on these things.
we're
Our elf
exhibiting
is
tolerance right
currently,
now.
yes, we want to be tolerant. Our elf is currently hanging out with the nativity set. He's kind of peeking over the top of the barn right now.
That's
So there's
bad.
probably
That's
all
that's
kinds
just
of
bad.
heresy going on right there.
We're losing people.
Okay, stay with us. All right. Favorite Christmas food or drink, Natasha? Favorite food or drink?
I'm gonna go with eggnog. I love
Mm,
eggnog,
I
but
do
I can't drink a
too.
ton of it, but I love it in small amounts. It's a guilty pleasure. I love it, but it always makes me laugh because Melissa Doherty, who probably a lot of people know, she's a YouTuber, a fellow apologist, and she absolutely hates eggnog. So every year we have this thing online about is eggnog wonderful or is it disgusting? I don't know if Melissa's watching, but for the record, it's wonderful. What
It
about you?
is. I love eggnog too. So I'm with you on that. It's not my favorite one, but I love the flavor of eggnog. I love
Okay.
eggnog lattes. I like making cookies out
Oh,
of
yes.
eggnog and whatever.
Oh, when
It's just
Starbucks got rid of the eggnog latte, it was the saddest thing.
heartbroken.
Every year
Yeah.
yeah,
Very,
every
yeah, very
year I
sad.
check back to see, do
Yeah.
they have the eggnog latte? And the answer is no.
Yeah.
I actually
Yeah.
sent Starbucks an email. I mean, how embarrassing is that? Like, of all
Did
things
you
to care
speak
about
to
in
the
the world?
manager of Starbucks about
I
the
totally did,
eggnog
yes!
latte?
I attempted to. I don't think that they ever responded,
How
but
dare they?
I did make my voice heard when it comes to the eggnog lattes,
Yeah,
yes.
that's good. You spoke to the manager. That's what it's all
Yes.
about this Christmas season. So my favorite is I'm going to give two because when I grew up in Southern California. Do you remember Baker Square? And they would have the pies for for Christmas. You don't remember Baker Square? It was the Southern
Well, I didn't grow up
California
in
like
California. I live
oh,
here
you
now, but I
grew up
grew up
in
in
oh,
Arizona,
that's right.
so
You grew up in
yeah.
Arizona. Okay, so we had this kind of chain restaurant, Baker Square. My mom would always order pies from Baker Square for Christmas, and one of the pies was called candy cane pie, and it had a layer of French silk, and then a layer of this kind of like whipped cream cheesy layer that had candy canes in it, like crunched up, and then it had whipped cream on the top and shaved chocolate, and it was just my favorite pie growing up. And then they closed. They either stopped making the pie or they closed the restaurants. I think they closed them all down. And I was like, this will not do. I really want to have this candy cane pie. So about, I don't know, maybe 10, 11 years ago, I developed a recipe and now I make a candy cane pie that I have to say is pretty darn
Wow.
close to what Baker Square used to make. And so that's kind of my tradition, the pie that I make every Christmas that I look forward to because I love that peppermint flavor with the chocolate and the cream. So I make that. And then my second, really favorite is just pecan pie, but served a little bit warm with ice cream. To me, that is just that's what I look forward to every Christmas season. So I really love that.
I love pecan pie. You don't see that a lot. I don't know, it's an acquired taste.
So good.
Also, when you have kids, a lot of times kids don't like those kind of like fancier tastes. And so my kids would never eat a pecan pie. So then when you go to the store and you're like, I'm buying a pie today, you have to pick the one that everyone is going to like.
No, you
So
don't. You pick the one you want, Natasha. You got to put yourself first.
that's
You
right.
have
Now
to
we're
be
in
the
therapy
hero of
again.
your own story.
That's right. I'm buying a pecan pie tomorrow.
Live
I'm
your
going to take care of
truth.
myself.
Live your
Yes,
truth.
exactly. Okay, Alisa, what is the ugliest ornament on your tree?
Well, I have 4 selections here to show you.
Oh,
And
wow.
I don't know which order to go in, but the sad thing is I actually did go up and get these off of our tree. So these aren't just things that like exist in a box somewhere no, these are actually on our tree because we have a family tree with like all the kids' ornaments that they made all throughout the year. So I don't know where this one came from, but I've got this guy. It's just a beard, a hat, and a nose. We've got, Sonic. We got Sonic and
Nice.
Tails on our tree. We've got Dale Earnhardt Jr. That came. I married into this one. This came with the marriage 20 years ago. But probably the ugliest one that we actually still do hang on our tree is we had this ornament of Aiden riding a skateboard. Well, I dropped it and the head came off, but we still hang the head. So that's probably it right there. How about you? What are your
Oh,
ugliest
that's
ones?
amazing. I love the headless one. I mean, sometimes you just have to hang on to things, right?
Yeah.
Well, we started this tradition because my husband's family did this growing up, where every year his mom would have the kids go and pick out an ornament for the year, and then she would dutifully write on the box the packaging of it, Brian, 1978 or whatever it was. And so we have a whole selection of childhood ornaments from Brian that we put on the tree every year, that basically go back to every year that he picked out. So we decided to do this with our kids. And when you have girls, and I have 2 girls, they pick out cute little things, right? They pick out fairies and bows and little snowmen, Frosty, Rudolph, things like that. Well, my son would pick out things like this one's Exhibit A. Ready for it? And these are from our tree too. I mean, this is
Yeah.
straight off of the
Like these are
tree.
hanging. Yeah.
Yes. So
Yes.
this is Batman. Yes. This is
Yes.
not made out of glass, but it would be breakable if it fell. And I actually would be kind of sad if it fell and broke, because it's just kind of a classic that we get out every year and hang up.
Yeah.
But very,
Well, maybe if you do drop
very
it, the head will
lovely.
come off and you can just hang the head like I do.
We're
Yeah.
never letting go of it, right? And then this one, we've got Bowser. Yes.
Yes,
And
fine choice.
I know, from Mario Brothers, if anyone's not sure what this is. But it was funny because I told my son before this, I said, you know what, we're going to be talking about our ugliest ornaments. And the 2 that came to mind were both yours. And I told him what they were. And he was like, okay, fine, I get the Batman. But he's like, this is like a really cool model. So he's 15 now. And he's like, this is really cool still. So he was slightly offended that I thought it was ugly. But nonetheless, this is what you get when you have a boy.
Yes.
So there
And
you
a
go.
family tree like that, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, what song would you eliminate from Christmas if you could?
That is so easy. All I Want for Christmas Is You. This song is played absolutely everywhere when you go into like retail stores. And I try to avoid going out into retail in general because I can't stand being out in stores at Christmas time. But it is everywhere. And the worst part of this song, I mean, the lyrics are so dumb anyway, but the worst part of it is that it's kind of catchy, even though you don't want it to be. So it gets stuck in your head forever.
Oh, yeah.
I am not kidding. My youngest daughter was singing this regularly. I mean, multiple times a week, because she gets songs stuck in her head all the time, until at least June of last year. All we heard last year was this song. So I never want to hear it again. I'm so tired of it. Alisa, I bet
Okay.
you feel passionately about your
Yes.
song choice here, given the
Grandma
musician.
got run over by a reindeer. That's it.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even feel like it needs commentary. Just
Because everyone agrees
stop.
with you.
Just stop it.
Yeah.
Stop it with Grandma got run over by a reindeer. That's it.
That's all it needs
all
to
I
be
got.
said.
That's all I got.
Okay. What about fruitcake? Love it or hate it?
So this is interesting because I don't think I've ever actually tasted fruitcake. How crazy is that? I've seen it. I've been gifted fruitcakes, but I've just never like.
But
so
you
I
never
can't
ate them.
say. I've never eaten one. So I feel like I need to try it to. Now, I'll tell you what I do love is panettone. Have you ever had panettone? It's similar in a
I don't
way
think
to
so.
fruitcake, but it's like a brioche dough, so it's very light and airy, and then there's kind of candied fruits in it, like there would be in a fruitcake, but it's not like a dense brick that you could kill someone with. It's just light and airy. How about you? Do you like fruitcake?
Well, like you, I don't have a lot of fruitcake experience, but I will say that when I had a piece of fruitcake, I remember thinking, this is absolutely disgusting and
Mm,
awful. I didn't even know what was in it. So, actually, before we were recording today, I had to Google and say, what is in a fruitcake? And then when I saw it with like the candied fruits and stuff, like it grossed me out just thinking about it. So,
mm,
definitely a no on fruitcake for me.
mm.
Um, and then finally, what about New
Yeah.
Year's resolutions? Do you love them or do you hate them?
I don't really do them. I think that if somebody could make one and follow through with it, it'd be a good thing. But I've done it so many.
Ooh.
When I was younger, like I would make these resolutions and then I wouldn't follow through. So I just don't do them anymore. I just try to like live a consistent life without like making a resolution. But it sounds to me like maybe you do make New Year's resolutions. I do remember a post from you like last year saying you had ordered some sort of exercise machine on January 1st.
Let's not talk about that.
Okay, we won't talk about that.
That's painful because it just proves your point, like, that bike well, see what okay, to be fair, what happened with that bike, I hadn't even opened it until, like, January 3rd of last year, that's why I had posted about it, it was kinda funny on Facebook, but when I finally got the thing up, it's the most uncomfortable exercise bike in the world. I thought it was like an upright kind of thing, which we used to have one like that, but instead, it's like a full I don't even know what you would call it, something mode where you're, like, fully leaned over like this, so it's so uncomfortable. I'm gonna just admit before I give my answer that I have been on the bike one time in the last year. So
Wow.
that's the update to that Facebook post because it was so miserably uncomfortable. I keep thinking I need to get back on it, but I just don't know that that's gonna happen. But that
Yeah.
said, I love New Year's resolutions. So I mean, my whole life when New Year's comes along, I am so excited. I get out the like Excel spreadsheet. I have different
That
categories
doesn't
of
surprise
goals.
me. That
So
doesn't surprise me. Yeah.
so I've got like spiritual goals and physical goals. I have subsets of those. I have ministry goals and I have family goals. I have marriage goals. I mean, I have like goals for everything. And I can't say that I always meet all his goals. In fact, I probably fail to meet a lot of them, but I find them helpful to like check back in with throughout the year and say, what am I really not doing well on here? So
Mm.
I
This is
love.
great. This is great because people need to understand this is why Natasha and I work well together because we are so different in this area. No, for real. Like opposites, like we make like a really good pair because like Natasha's got the Excel spreadsheet, she's got all the goals for all the different areas of her life and I'm rolling out of bed like I just don't want to sleep in too late today. Like my goal is to be awake by 10 today. That's my goal. Not even for the whole year, but just for today. But it's funny too because this is a little inside scoop on when we're preparing for Unshaken Faith podcast is, like Natasha will have everything all written out and and I'm just like, okay, what am I talking about? All right, here we go. And I'll just, kind of wing it. So I think we work together well in that way because we approach things like that so different. So we can actually kind of, your strengths can fill in my gaps and my strengths can fill in your gaps. And so I think it works well. But
Yeah. No,
anyway,
absolutely. The one thing that we have found that we are very similar on, I mean, we have a lot of similarities, but
yes,
especially we've identified that we are both serious introverts, which maybe some
yes.
people think is like a strange thing because maybe you assume that if you go out and speak and you get up on stage or you do things like this, that you have to be an extrovert. We are both, I mean, I don't know if you took personality test who would out ex introvert the
Mm.
other. That's a tough call, but both of us, we both feel that.
Yeah. I
So
actually
it's,
think you might have me beat by a little bit
yeah,
because I've noticed that, yeah, it's like, and Frank is the opposite. So when we go do these
yeah.
conferences, Frank is like a quintessential extrovert. And so it's sort of like this spectrum. And then we walk out according to that spectrum. So Frank walks first, like if we're going to go greet people, and then I'll walk second, and then Natasha's like last. It's in the order of the
It's
extrovert introvert thing.
It totally is. That's so funny. I know, like,
Yeah.
sometimes we'll get done speaking and we'll go backstage, we'll be at, like, the green room and it'll be a break. It doesn't ever even occur to us, like, "Oh, I should go out into the general area or go to the book table or something like that," and Frank is like, "Come on, we've got 20 minutes before we have to be back
Yeah.
on. Let's go out to the book tables," and we're like, "Wait, what?" Like, this is the time to, like, breathe. So,
Yeah, he'll just turn
yeah,
us around and like push us out. He'll just be like, "Come on, we're going. It's a go
it's
talk to the
been good.
people."
It's been good for us though, right? I
Yes,
mean, we get
it
out
has.
there and it's so, and in case anyone's wondering, I don't want it to sound like we don't want to talk to people. It's so wonderful to go out and meet people and just meet people that we recognize names from on our, our Facebook pages and stuff like that. It's awesome. It's just that sometimes it takes a little push from the extrovert amongst us to get out there.
That's right. That's good.
Well, we're going to bust some Christmas myths. I think that some people think that our podcast is a downer because we're always, critiquing ideas and talking about things that are going on and saying, hey, this is a concern. And so we thought we'd keep up the theme, as Alisa said, be Debbie Downers. And we're going to do that with some Christmas myths. But just to make sure no one's getting depressed in this Christmas season on this episode, we're also going to be doing book giveaways as we go through this. So we each have 3 myths that we're going to bust. And when we do one, we're then going to give away a book, and then the other person will do one and give away another book. So we're going to give away a bunch of books right now. Make sure that you have been commenting or start commenting, because that's how you will get to win one of these books. And the books that we're going to be giving away, by the way, these are books that we have individually picked as really important books that we have loved from this year. So we're excited to share them with you guys. All right. Well, with that, my first myth is that Jesus was born in the year 1 AD. Now, maybe you've already realized this, maybe you haven't, but this was kind of a surprise to me just a few years ago. I mean, it was kind of recently. I just hadn't ever looked into this, but we kind of assume that the way that our years are structured, that Jesus is born in that first year. All of history gets divided into 2 parts. You have all the AD years after Jesus, and then you have all the BC years before Jesus. And so you would assume, okay, well then Jesus was born in that first year. But that's actually not the case. Our current dating system was not put into effect until 525 AD by a monk. And actually, it didn't even catch on until I think a couple hundred years later. I don't know exactly how long that was, but they miscalculated the date when Jesus would have been born. And so that's how we ended up with that error. So how do we know that Jesus was not born then? Well, I'm going to read you Matthew 2:1. It says, "Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king." Okay, so if we think of this, that kind of gives us a historical reference point for when Jesus was born. If he was born during the days of King Herod, then the last possible date when he could have been born would be when Herod died. And historians and scholars say that that was in about 4 BC. So Jesus had to have been born before 4 BC. And most scholars, according to a few other things that we won't get into tonight, would say that they're going to peg it between 4 and 6 BC. So no,
Yeah.
Jesus was not born in the year 1 AD.
And
Okay,
a
so
lot
the
of,
first,
oh, go ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
Well,
I
I
was
was
going to
just
give
going to
away a
say,
book.
because I remember when I first kind of discovered this, and my immediate existential crisis was, but wait, the Bible says Jesus was 33 when he died. But then I did a little more research. It actually doesn't say that. It says he was around a certain age. And of course, his ministry might have, it's kind of chronicled by these different events, but it could have been, a little bit longer or shorter than we have traditionally calculated it, because it doesn't, like, the scriptures aren't totally clear on that. So Jesus was probably more like maybe 37, 36, 37, 38 when he died, which was kind of fascinating because I didn't know that. But go ahead.
Yeah, it's amazing how much we assume, right?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
we just hear over and over, and we assume, oh, that must be in the Bible. And we'll talk about a couple more of those here coming up. Well, here's the first book that I want to give away, and this is Street Smarts. Let's see, am I on the camera here? Here we go. Street Smarts by Greg Koukl. This is a really important book that came out this year, and so I'm excited to give it away. I think most people watching are probably familiar with Greg Koukl. He's the president of Stand to Reason, and he's the author of Tactics, which is sort of an apologetics classic that helps you understand just how to engage well with others when you're talking about faith conversations. And so this is kind of a follow-up to Tactics, where he is applying those tactics to some very specific cultural conversations that are happening. And it's just a very accessible read. You don't have to be an advanced apologist or anything like that to read it. He gives lots of example conversations that you can have, and it's just a really helpful book. So Street Smarts is going to this is funny to say out loud, Radtastic Dude. So Radtastic Dude, you are the winner of Street Smarts by Greg Koukl.
Yeah, so Radtastic
Congratulations.
Dude, you need to email contact@alisachilders.com with your real name. I'm assuming your mom did not name you Radtastic. I won't judge if she did, but let us know your name and where we can send that book, and we will get that in the mail to you. So, and again, if you're just joining us and you didn't hear in the beginning, if you want to enter for any of the giveaways, all you had to do is leave a comment. If you comment, you are entered. And we're going to pick random winners from the comment section as we go throughout this time. All right, the myth I'm going to bust is one that I'm really indebted to J. Warner Wallace for a lot of this research. He did a really deep dive in some of his podcasts and some of his writings in this claim, which is that sometimes skeptics will claim that the story of Jesus' birth, his virgin birth, is just a retelling of ancient mythology. So in other words, they're saying, oh yeah, everybody has this sort of idea in their religious system of a virgin-born, deity or something like that. So it's a very frequent claim. But when we actually examine the evidence, the claim kind of disintegrates. So, and again, this research is all coming from J. Warner Wallace, but the three most common are Buddha, Horus, and Mithras. And so the first thing that just needs to be said is that none of the earliest and most reliable sources on these figures indicate that they were born of a virgin. So there's that, right? There's just something that kind of gets repeated on the internet. So with Buddha, the earliest sources we have on Buddha specifically mention that he was born of a royal human bloodline. Now, there are some later stories that record more unusual elements surrounding, how he was conceived, but they don't really line up or match what we talk about when we're talking about the virgin conception of Jesus. And then so we have Horus, who is an Egyptian deity. His parents were Osiris and Isis. And early stories about Horus, the earliest, mentions that we have, they actually mention Osiris's seed being in Isis to conceive him. So you don't have a virgin birth with Horus either. Now, then we have Mithras. Now, Mithraism was an ancient mystery cult there's no scripture, there's no surviving writings from it. All we have are some sculptures and some paintings, and those things can be kind of tough to interpret. So the earliest version of the birth of Mithras portrays him emerging out of the side of a mountain. So he emerges out of this mountain and it leaves a hole in the rock. And so, unless the mountain was a virgin, that's hardly a virgin birth story, right? Just coming out of the side of a rock. So there's really not enough real evidence on these sort of ancient myths to connect it with what we're talking about when we talk about Jesus' virgin conception. All right, so there's that one. Busted that myth for you. And then we're going to do a giveaway. And the first book that I'd like to give away is one that I've just read this year that I think is fantastic. It's by Rosaria Butterfield, and it's called Lies of Our Anti-Christian Age. And the winner is going to be getting the study guide. So I have both. Both of these are going to be going out to Katie Pruitt. So Katie Pruitt, you have just won the study guide and the book of 5 Lies of Our Anti-Christian Age. So again, Katie and Radtastic Dude, email contact@alisachilders.com to claim your prize. Let us know your address, and we will get that in the mail to you. All right, you got another myth for us, Natasha?
I do. And this one is it's a very simple one, but the myth is that a donkey carried Mary to Bethlehem. So we kind of assume this. You see it portrayed in every movie. You see it in every picture. It's in every storybook. Mary's always on a donkey. But let's read Luke 2:4-6. Listen for the donkey, or lack thereof. Joseph also went up from Galilee, from the town of Nazareth to Judea, to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David, to be registered with Mary, his betrothed, who was with child. And while they were there, the time came for her to give birth. No donkey. Doesn't say anything about how she actually got there. Now, it's possible that she went on a donkey. We just don't know. So I actually made a bunch of these for a youth group that I was leading recently for a fun Christmas kind of quiz. And you had to answer all these things according to like a yes, this is explicitly stated in scripture, a no, this is not, and there's something that would actually contradict it in scripture. And then maybe, meaning, well, the Bible doesn't say that, but it could have been. So this one is in that maybe category for sure. Whereas Jesus was born in 1 AD is an actual no, because we know from the historical cues in the scripture that it would have had to be earlier than that. All right. The next book that I want to give away is this one. I love the cover on this. It's just beautiful. So this is The Case for Life, 2nd edition by Scott Klusendorf. And I think the original one, the first edition, came out in 2009, but they just released the 2nd edition. last month. And this is just such an important book because the first edition was kind of this classic in terms of the pro-life cause and understanding how do you make a case for the pre-born, how do you talk to people about the sanctity of life. And it's such a valuable resource. This is a topic, I mean, not to get overly serious in a Christmas live stream, but this is a topic that every Christian should be passionate about. And if you don't feel passionate about it, you should ask yourself why, because millions of babies, literally millions of babies, are being killed. And so how do we address that? If Christians aren't addressing that, who is? And if you feel unsure about that, or you feel like, gosh, I can't talk about that, or I don't know how to really, how to have those conversations, this is the book you need. This is an amazing book. I endorsed it, and I'm so happy to give this away to somebody. So I hope that this will be a valuable resource. I hope lots of you will actually get this book. If you're not familiar with it, study it, embrace it, and fight for the pro-life cause, because it is a critical one for every Christian to understand.
Scott's coming on my podcast in January to talk about that book. So yeah,
Awesome.
there's nobody better. Scott's great. So
Awesome. Yeah. And that one goes to Rick McCleary, who is also, I'm sure, a radtastic dude.
Yes. Everybody's radtastic who's on this live stream today.
All of our listeners are radtastic.
They are. So Rick, email us at contact@alisachilders.com with your address, and we will get that book sent out to you. I just saw the name of the next winner come in. This is fantastic. Okay.
Is it Radtastic Gal?
No, it's great. So the next myth that I'm going to bust in, and most people, frankly, know that this is not exactly accurate, but some of the information around this might be interesting to somebody. So, we all know that Christmas song, "We Three Kings of Orient are, bearing gifts, we've traveled so far." So there's actually 3 inaccuracies just in that first line. So first of all, the Bible doesn't mention that there were 3 wise men. The wise men brought 3 gifts, which is usually why people think that there were 3 wise men. But the Bible doesn't actually specify how many actually made the journey. Now, the second inaccuracy in that line is the word kings. So Matthew 2:1 tells us of wise men from the east who followed the star to see the boy Jesus. And because of, they had a high standing in court. And because of that, Tertullian, who was an early church father, he wrote this: "The East generally regarded the Magi as kings, but they weren't actual monarchs. It was more of just like an honorific kind of thing that they bestowed upon them, but they weren't actual kings. They weren't ruling monarchs that came from the East." And then the third inaccuracy is from the Orient. So the wise men did not come as far east as the Orient, but were more likely coming from somewhere a little closer, like Babylon, which is in Iraq. So that was where a certain captive named Daniel, some of us will remember that story. This is where Daniel was taken captive and was eventually made the chief of the governors over all the wise men of Babylon. And that's from Daniel 2, verse 48. And so these specific wise men, the reason they would have been aware of the prophecies of the Messiah is because they would have been familiar with the prophecies about Jesus through the writings of Daniel. So that makes a lot of sense as to why they would have been aware of those prophecies. So those are just 3 inaccuracies in that first line, because we are here to poop on your party tonight. All right, next book that I'm going to be giving away, you guys, this book is so good. The Toxic War on Masculinity. I actually interviewed Nancy Pearcey on my podcast before I had a chance to read this, but I have since read it. And I can just tell you, I wish every man in America would read this book. I wish everybody in America would read this book. But I especially, like mothers of sons, you need to read this book. The history in this book that helps us to understand just the way things are between the sexes right now, and particularly some of the things we see in modern men, why it's that way. This book will open your eyes. It was so enlightening. Love, love, love this book. So this book is going to Happy Dork. Happy Dork? Congratulations. You have won the Toxic War on Masculinity. I love that we have to pick their avatar names, but Happy Dork, congratulations, you won. Please contact us.
Good job.
At contact@alisachilders.com and give us your name, unless your mom really did name you Happy Dork, and we'll be sending that out to you, but give us your address and we will get that sent out to you really quickly. All right, you got one more.
I do. And I just want to say the Nancy Pearcey book is so good. If Alisa hadn't given that one away, I was going to give it away because that was one of
Yeah.
my favorite ones from the year also. Just fantastic. If you love history too, like it's just such an interesting history of the role of men in the family and in society and
Yeah.
just amazing. So if you don't win the books that we're talking about, I'd really encourage you to check them out because these are like our top 3 books each that we're talking about from the year. So they're really good. You want to get them. Okay, the last myth is that innkeepers turned Jesus or Joseph and Mary away, rather. So let's listen. Luke 2, 6-7. Did innkeepers turn Mary and Joseph away? It says, while they were there, the time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger because there was no guest room available for them. So I think we have this cultural imagination that they were going door to door trying to find something. Maybe they did. This is another one in the maybe category. There's nothing that would be explicitly against that in scripture. It definitely just doesn't exactly say that. And also, we kind of think when I hear inn, I think in my head of sort of like a hotel or something like that. But scholars say that this word really means more of like a guest room, like a room in a
Hmm.
house. So we don't know what the process was. Were they going door to door? Did they just know that there was no room available? We don't know if they were turned away or not. Could have been, but the Bible just doesn't say that. So that is a big maybe. Well, our final book giveaway here, or at least for this portion, is Critical Dilemma by Neil Shinby and Pat Sawyer. So this book is fantastic. It's an amazing resource to understand critical theory. So critical theory is this underlying ideology, philosophy behind all the social justice stuff that you see today. In fact, you've seen it rear its ugly head with all of the things going on with Palestine and the anti-Semitism that we've been hearing about. If you're thinking, how did we get to this point? What are all the threads that tie these things together? Like, this is the ultimate resource on that. It's not an easy read. It's not something that you're just going to thumb through. It's just the ultimate resource on this subject, but it's an important subject, so it's worth really digging into to understand. So Neil and Pat have done an amazing work in this, really fairly characterizing what it is,
Hmm.
because a lot of people try to say that, oh no, people who are against critical theory and all of its different versions, they just don't understand, it's just a legal theory, whatever, this is not that. It explains exactly from the people themselves behind these concepts what it's all about. Extremely well researched, lots of quotes from people. So it's just a fabulous resource. So I highly recommend it. And this one is going to, let's see the name, Jermaine Ellis. Jermaine Ellis gets Critical Dilemma.
Awesome. Jermaine, just email us at contact@alisachilders.com with your name and your address, and we will get that sent out to you. All right, my final myth really overlaps with yours. And so I'm kind of excited because it sort of brings in some extra information. So yes, there's no mention of an innkeeper. But my myth that I'm going to bust is that Jesus was born in a stable. So this is actually coming from early church tradition. So Justin Martyr talked about a stable, which is why I think so many people kind of assume that there was a stable. And then some early church traditions, actually, I think Justin Martyr was the one who mentioned a cave. I could be wrong about the stable. I think he's the one that mentioned the cave. But those were kind of the two that people thought about. But let's look at what the scripture says. So Luke chapter 2 mentions a couple of important details. We know that Jesus was laid in a manger, which was a type of a feeding trough for animals, and that there was no room at the inn. And as Natasha mentioned, there's no mention of an innkeeper, and the word that's translated as inn is the Greek word kataluma, which is better translated as guest room. In fact, it's actually, Natasha, the same word that Jesus used in Luke 22:11 to reference the upper room, the night before he was betrayed, the side of the Last Supper. So, just when I was researching this, what I learned was that Mary and Joseph probably would not have tried to stay in an inn or like a hotel type of situation, because it would have been customary for them to stay with Joseph's relatives in Bethlehem because he had family there. So it would have been customary for them to stay in the house. But because of the census and everybody was coming there, the house was likely overcrowded, and the guest room that inn, Cataluma, was probably occupied. And so Jesus was probably born in the lower level of the house. And this is where, and this all kind of makes sense when you think about the cultural facts and the historical facts. It was common for animals to be brought inside at night to keep warm and safe, from theft and from the cold. And so that explains why there would have been a manger there. So probably not a stable, probably not a cave, probably not a hotel, probably the lower level where the animals kind of came in at night, and that makes a lot of sense. All right, the next book I'm going to give away is a book that is so rich in history. And I love books that are historical like this because I just always learn so much. And that is Truth Changes Everything by Dr. Jeff Myers. This is just a really, really good book. If you want to know what Christianity has done for the world, this kind of narrative out there that says that, Christians have, spread by the sword and they've done all this horrible things in history. And look, I'm not denying that we have some horrors in our history for sure. But if you want to know what Christianity has done for the world in world history, this is the book for you. So I want to recommend this to everybody. But right now, we are going to be giving this away to Joan Bass. Joan Bass, you're getting Truth Changes Everything by Dr. Jeff Myers. Again, just email us at contact@alisachilders.com with your address, and we will get it sent out to you. Okay, let's see. All right, so that's it for the myths. We've busted all the myths that we were planning on doing. So now we're going to go to our live Q&A. So I'm pulling up everybody's questions, and don't go away because we have more giveaways. I actually have 3 items that I'm going to give away that are not books. And we are also going to be giving away 2 free tickets to the conferences that we just announced in Pittsburgh. And where's the other one, Natasha?
In Detroit.
Detroit. So Detroit, if you're anywhere in the Detroit area, and is it May 9th? I got to go up in my notes here.
March 9th in
March
Detroit,
9th.
Metro
If
City
you're
Church.
going to be in Detroit on March 9th, or you can be, and you'd like to win the tickets, in the comment section, you just need to say, I want tickets to Detroit. Was that it? Something like that. We'll find you.
I want Detroit tickets. Yeah.
I want
something
Detroit
with Detroit
tickets.
and tickets. So we know
Yes.
that's what you're asking for.
That's
Yeah.
right. And
I
if
want
you're
Detroit
going
tickets.
to be in the Pittsburgh area on May 18th, or you can, and you want to win those tickets, then you just comment, I want Pittsburgh tickets, okay? And we will search those and pick random winners at the end. So you still have time to enter for that. All right, so we're going to
And
go
Alisa, I think we should also be giving away our ugly ornaments.
I can't give my head
I know.
to anyone.
That's the thing. They're treasured. They're ugly, but they're treasured.
And I got a text from my husband after I showed the Dale Earnhardt, and he was just like, careful with the Dale Earnhardt, okay? Like, this is precious.
He's like, I'm shutting down the live stream. That's it.
Yeah, and he
I'm
has the
at it.
power. He could do it. He could shut us down right now.
That's right.
Yeah. So, okay, let's go to our Q&A. We're going to get through as many of these as we can. Here's a good one to kind of start with. Susan is asking, how did you two first connect? This will be interesting to hear your side and my side, because I'm not even sure I remember. But do you remember?
Was it at CIA?
Well, we
Is that
met.
where we-
Yeah, that's where we first met. And see, so I was kind of fangirling because I was following your blog. This was before I even had a blog. I wasn't going to start a blog. I was just going to the Cross-Examined Instructor Academy to attend as a student and kind of meet some of the people who had helped really save my faith when I was in crisis. And Natasha, you were one of those. When I found you, I think when I had really kind of found my footing again, and I was thinking, how do I teach all this stuff to my kids? And so I found Natasha's blog, which at the time was Christian Mom Thoughts, and she had all these great blogs about how to teach apologetics to your kids. And so I felt like I knew you. And I remember seeing you at CIA and being like, hi. It's just, I knew you didn't know me, but it was just weird when you're like, hi, nice to meet you. And I'm like, oh yeah, you don't know me. I know you. You don't know me. So that's my memory of meeting you. But I think honestly, I think that we connected to continue working together because Natasha, you really early on, you would just shoot me advice all the time. When I would have something on Facebook or a blog, you'd say, hey, this was really good. Maybe you could, tweak this a little bit or do this, I did a little bit of different way, helping me with marketing. So that's my memory memory of kind of how we just started working together, and then we started speaking together at different things, and it just went from there. Is that kind of your memory as well?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know exactly what triggered us starting, the podcast at the particular time. It kind of was just a natural thing because we would just get along really well. So when we would see each other, whether it was
Yeah.
at the Future Cross Examined or wherever it was, or we would do, interviews of each other for our podcast and we'd be talking, outside of the recording, we just really clicked and we would always, enjoy talking about so many things. And so it got to a point where we were like, you know what, this would be fun to do something together. And we talked about conferences and then that led to the podcast. And so I think that
Yeah.
we just realized, we have a lot in common. We do have the different things, like Alisa was saying earlier. I like
Yeah.
spreadsheets. I don't think she does.
No,
But
I wouldn't even know how
other
to
than
open
that,
one.
other than that, we had so much in common that it just made sense, and it's been really fun working together this year.
That's awesome. All right, here's a little bit more of a serious question from Christina, and maybe we can both take a crack at this one. What do you see as the greatest challenge to historic Christians in 2024? What do you think?
I have to think about that for a second. Do you have something that jumps to mind?
Well, I do think as far as an apologetic challenge, I think it's deconstruction, because deconstruction is sort of this process of this self-guided process where it's all about kind of what resonates with your inner self. But the whole point of deconstruction is to move away from historic Christianity. So it can land you in lots of different places. So whereas in years past I might have said, progressive Christianity, or maybe at one point it was atheism, I think deconstruction covers both of those because it's the vehicle out that takes you to those other destinations. So I think that would be a big apologetic challenge that's really has to do with objective truth versus relativism, which I think is fueling the deconstruction movement. So I think that would be a huge challenge. But but wrapped up, or I should say, what's overlapping deconstruction is a lot of the triggers and the crises that people are having that make them vulnerable to deconstruction. So whether it be, maybe just having a problem with biblical morality or like legitimate spiritual abuse or, just different things that I think all of these challenges kind of work together. That might be my best answer. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with all that. And I would also say cancel culture. I think that term has kind of, I don't know, it almost feels a little passe already as of a couple of years ago when everybody was talking about cancel culture. But it's a reality now, whether people are still talking about that, using that term or not, people are getting cut off. I would call it cut off culture. So many people, and we've talked about this before on the podcast, Alisa and I have talked to so many people at the Unshaken conferences who come up to us and they say, what do we do? Our kids aren't talking to us anymore, or a colleague isn't talking to me anymore, or a friend isn't talking to me, or I'm losing my job. I think that this is where things are getting real for a lot of people, and it didn't necessarily feel that, I don't know, scary before to be a Christian. Scary in terms of, hey, there are consequences. Obviously, there have been consequences for being a Christian throughout history in some really significant ways, and still today in a lot of other parts of the world that we haven't experienced here in America. But I see that there are a lot of personal relationships that are being lost right now because of what people believe. And I think that's the challenge. It's not even necessarily that people have done anything. I mean, most people I talk to, it's not like, oh, I did something and someone won't forgive me. It's, I was just a Christian. It's just what I believe. And someone thinks that I am a toxic and oppressive and harmful person because of what I believe. And there's no way you can convince someone out of that. And a lot of that comes back to that critical theory mentality, which is why I said that book is so important, the Critical Dilemma book, because it will help you understand what is going on into this. So I think that's the biggest challenge, because if you are not super convicted of your own faith, that what you believe is actually true, when you start to see all the consequences that are going to happen for being a Christian in all areas of your life, you're losing relationships, you're losing jobs, all of these different things, you're going to just walk away. So I think that is the biggest challenge for the church, because there are so many nominal Christians still. And if there are that many nominal Christians, we're going to see people just leave everywhere.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. These next two questions, one's for me, one's for you. So mine is from Christina. Alisa, I'm so curious, when you write a book with someone else, how does that work? Does one person physically write and the other talks? Always wondered that. So I am sure there are lots of different ways people do this. How I did this with Tim Barnett was I think we are both, I don't know if I would say Tim is a spreadsheet kind of person. I don't think he's a spreadsheet kind of person. I think he's more like, we needed a spreadsheet kind of person, Natasha. I think we did.
You should have reached out. I totally would have helped you guys.
We could have used a spreadsheet. But I think the way we started was we were like, okay, you write these chapters and I'll write these chapters, then we'll switch and we'll edit each other and then, switch back. And that was kind of the original plan. But then what ended up happening is we were kind of just writing in these two different, like we weren't communicating. Well, we were communicating, but we had to like find a way to put our ideas together. And we kind of just didn't know how to do that. And so we ended up meeting with our publisher and our agent, and we read through everything we had. We kind of put it all together, and then we had our assignments. Okay, you're going to write this, and I'm going to write this. And but honestly, we joke about it because by the end, I think we're both creatives that are just not very like spreadsheety. So we were just kind of like all over the place. Like I would get in and get inspired on something, start working on it, and we would even be working on the same chapter at the same time in different places. And at the end, I even said to Tim at one point, I'm like, I know you're supposed to write this part, but can I put a little? And he's like, look, it's a free for all at this point. So I can honestly say that the voice, every word of the book is both of us. Now, I don't think that's typically the way people do it. I think typically people will just be like, okay, you write chapter 1, I'll write chapter 2, you write chapter 3, and then it's just sort of like, okay, a little clear that way. But we just really just got in there, and it's both of us on every word. So that's kind of how we did it. But
That is so
really,
funny. That would make
it's
my
hard.
type A head explode if I was like, I would have to have this very methodical thing. Like, no, I'm writing chapter 1. You're doing chapter 2. Like, I think that
Yeah.
would just make my head explode.
Well, you probably could have helped us because I think we're both just like, yeah, I'll do this, let's do that. So, yeah. All right, this one's for you, Natasha. What additional resource? Oh, I keep picking the same person. Well, you're asking such good questions, Christina. I don't mean to keep picking the same person, so I'll ask this one from Christina. Natasha, what additional resources do you know of for Christian parents that have kids in public schools? I feel like this needs to be someone's ministry.
Yeah, no, this is huge, and I will say I don't know all of these sites off the top of my head, but we are actually, and by we I mean the gentleman that I mentioned earlier that I interviewed, Andy White, who might still be on the live stream here, but we are working together to put together a PDF basically that has all of these different resources in the document, so that people have somewhere to go to look into sites, because there are some sites available that are doing some really great work, and I believe that Andy is looking at doing some more of that in the future as well. And I've been really encouraging him to do that because I think there is such an opportunity there, like you're saying. So I don't know them off the top of my head, but if you go to the last episode of my podcast, the Natasha Crain podcast, in the show notes of that episode, you can see links to several that we just kind of talked about that he mentioned incidentally. So that's not like a formal resource document, but you can see maybe 7 or 8 different wonderful websites right there that you can check out. And there's a lot to investigate just from that alone. So I would point you there and just know that resource document is coming.
Yeah, good. This is a great question from Danielle. Will there be a difference in the content of the 2024 conference than what was in 2023? That's a great question, Danielle.
So the answer is no. We are extending the same conferences just to different locations. So we always, when we started these conferences, we actually had the idea that it was going to be an annual conference and that we'd have a different theme each year and, different speakers, different topics, whatever the case was going to be. But because there were so many people who wanted to see the same conference and we just hadn't gotten to all of these different cities, so we said, well, you know what? Let's do it. It was going really well. Let's do 4 more locations. So it is the same conference. If you've already been to an Unshaken conference, if you don't want to see it again, then don't go to one of the new ones. But if you loved it, which we hope you did, and you happen to be kind of close, we'd love to have you back. In fact, I think that I was looking at where Detroit is on a map because like I said, I've never even been to Michigan. So I'm trying to figure out, I live in Southern California. So to me, everything's very far away, but in the East Coast, it seems like you guys all travel between states really easily, but it's not that far from Ohio. I know that we had people from Michigan who came to our Nashville conference, who came to the Dayton one. So, maybe if you were in Ohio, you missed Dayton, you can go to the Michigan one, or even if you were there, you can go again. So yes, it is the same conference, but we would love to have you there.
Yeah, and by the way, I think we forgot to mention this, but we are going to soon be announcing an additional 2. So there'll be 4 dates in 2024. We're just not quite ready to announce those final 2. Just a few little things we got to button up and get finalized. But we do have 2 more that we'll be doing in 2024, same content. So that's a great question, Danielle. All right, we'll answer one more, and then we'll do another giveaway, and then we'll answer some more questions. So this one's from Dawn. This is a great question. And I'd love your take on this too, Natasha. Would you recommend going to a conference at a progressive church that my sister-in-law's sister is speaking at? She is deconstructing and has become a speaker about it. Would it open up conversation with her? So I think this is a great question, Dawn, and I think this is sort of a question that I would say I don't see why not. If it's an opportunity where you can go and open up a conversation that way and show her that you're willing to hear what she has to say, I think that it could be something that could end up very fruitful if she might be open to hearing what you have to say. In fact, Natasha mentioned Melissa Doherty earlier. Melissa, well, I don't know what we can say about this or not, about the project she's working on, but she, for some research, she visited some progressive and New Thought churches and actually talked with the pastors and asked them questions. And it's really interesting, some of the conversations that she had, where I think they're kind of so used to seeing conservatives as the bad guy and as the one that's mean and intolerant and all that. So if you go and you have an opportunity to have discussions with her, I think it could be very fruitful. Now, the only caveat I would make on that is, maybe for somebody else who's listening, is if you're immature in your faith or you're not solid on what you believe, I don't know if I would recommend necessarily putting yourself in an environment where truth is going to be torn down like that. So it kind of depends on your maturity level and just how solid you are on your feet. Just something to pray about and think about. But yeah, I think it could be a really great opportunity. What do you think, Natasha?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, there's no reason not to go, as long as you don't feel like this is going to be problematic for yourself, like Alisa just said. But otherwise, as a conversation starter, this is great. I mean, I'd go. I would take lots of notes. I would take notes on the things that, what are things that raise questions for me? What are points that you want to talk about with her afterwards? And just have some specific things so that you don't come away and it just becomes like a debate over progressive Christianity in general. But actually take the time to make specific notes. The speaker said this. What do you think of that? Because this is something that, I would personally see differently, whatever it is that you're going to say. But just take some specific notes so you have something specific to talk about rather than just progressive Christianity in general. But yeah, I think it's a great opportunity.
Yeah, cool. All right, I'm going to give away something that's not a book, and it's not a ticket, but it is a CD. So I actually have 2 of these to give away tonight. So this is my latest. I've got 5 new songs that I've written over the last 10 years, and really love the way this was produced by a guy named Scott Williamson, a good friend of ours. And I just love it. So I'm going to give one of these away. But if you win this and you do not have a CD player, no worries, because I'm also going to send you to your email links for the digital downloads. So you can just keep this as a little item that is useless if you don't have a CD player, but you will also get to your email the free downloads. Okay. And the winner of this is Carla Justice. So Carla, congratulations. You just won Beauty from the Ash, my 5-song EP. So again, email at contact@alisachilders.com and give us your address, and we will get that sent out to you. And also, we'll get your, when you email us, we'll send you back with a code to put on the website to get the downloads for free.
And you guys should know that
Okay.
if you come to an Unshaken conference, Alisa actually sings from her EP there. So it's a special bonus treat if you come to the Unshaken
Yeah,
conference.
I did start doing that.
It's
So
amazing. It's
that was kind of
beautiful and
fun.
very special. Yeah.
That was fun. I got to do that at the Nashville show. So
Yeah.
I was
It
really
was
excited
awesome.
about that. Okay, here's a question from Damara. How can we better minister to people dealing with genuine church hurt? So I guess I'll start with this one. I think the one thing, and especially in the deconstruction book in our advice chapter, what we talk about is it's important to do triage when you think about how you're going to minister to somebody who might, be going through some kind of church hurt or might be in some sort of level of deconstruction. And, when you think about triage, when there's a big accident and they start bringing people into the ER doctors have to do this triage where, most likely the guy with the punctured lung is going to get treated before the guy with the broken arm, right? You find, what's the most important thing to address at that time? And so when it comes to church hurt, I think listening, being compassionate, really seeking to understand what they've been through, cry with those who cry. If there's been genuine abuse, addressing the abuse and standing against the abuse and working with the person, to call that out, to bring, to get the church to maybe acknowledge if there's an abusive leader or something like that. I think that can go a long way to where we're not just like covering things up or shoving them under the rug or something like that. So maybe doing a little bit of that triage. And, I think our instinct as Christians is to want to fix someone's theology over coffee, right? But there might be a deeper issue that we need to minister to before we think about, fixing their theology or whatever. So maybe just, ask God for wisdom and do a little bit of triage. What's the most important thing? Probably in that case, the most important thing is to show compassion and to help them. And it might even be the type of situation where they need immediate help, maybe getting out of a situation that they don't know how to get out of. So ask God for wisdom. He promises to give it. And I would say just sort of you have permission to not try to fix the theology right away, but minister to the most important needs that come across. What do you think, Natasha?
Yeah, no, that's such a good answer. I think I have trouble with this, I think personally, because I get so stuck in the mode of, okay, I understand, you were hurt in this way or that way. However, is Christianity true? That's what matters, right? So like I have this tendency to kind of come back to that. And, to be honest, I haven't really dealt with that problem myself in my own life. I have never been through any kind of significant church hurt or spiritual abuse, any kind of scenario like that. So it's not something that I have had a lot of experience with. And I think that sometimes that makes it harder for me to have the compassion that Alisa is talking about, because I just go straight to that logical point. So I love what you're saying, Alisa. I think that's so true. When people are genuinely hurt, to just be there for them and to help in terms of the triage situation before you go to those logical points, like I would be inclined to do.
Yeah. I think it was our friend Sean McDowell who tells the story of he's getting a haircut, and this lady asked him about something about the problem of evil. Like, why does a good God allow evil? And he goes into this logical answer, and she just bursts out crying. She starts crying. And he realized, like, oh, I got to address the question under the question before. I heard him tell that story on the platform once, and I thought that was a good way to think about it. All right. Gary wants to know, this is for you, Natasha, does Andy address the inappropriate books on the public school shelves in public schools from the elementary level through high school? And if yes, how pastors, parents, and grandparents can most effectively respond?
Yeah, that's a great question. That is not something that we talked specifically about in the two podcasts that we did. I'm trying to remember this woman's name, though, because there is somebody who I get emails from who is really focused on this specific topic. I think her name is Karen England. You know what? Let me just see if I can pull this up. And she is basically working with districts, parents in districts everywhere to, it's Karen England. And I've been actually wanting to get her onto my podcast. I'm hoping to do that in the next couple of months if I can. But she's trying to get these pornographic books out of schools. And so she is kind of doing this grassroots effort to get parents to report from districts all over. You can go on her website if you Google it, and you can pull up different districts and different states to see if people have reported what they have found. And she has all of the different books on there, so you can actually see the problematic pages to understand what's going on. If your district is somebody's already reported on there, then you can go and you can see these are the books that are there. And she has opened my eyes to so many of these things. I mean, I can't even, I just can't even, I don't even know what to say. Speechless. I remember a few weeks ago, I saw some of the new pages from a book that she had put up, and I just couldn't believe it. I literally could not believe that these books are in schools. And so, it gets me really fired up. But this is a really big problem. I know that that's one that this woman is working on in particular. So I would look her up if you're interested in that specific topic.
Okay, good. This is a question
sorry,
from...
Lisa, one more thing really fast. I was
Uh-huh.
just going to say, and that's a really good example of why it's important for every Christian to know what's going on in public schools. This isn't just, if you have kids in public schools, here's what you need to know. Every Christian should be aware of it, because that's where the vast majority of kids are going to school, whether they're Christian kids or they're not Christian kids. We, as Christians who want to be salt and light, we should be caring for all the kids who are there. We don't want pornographic materials to be in the school libraries for any kids who are out there. So whether their parents want them to see that or not, it actually doesn't matter, because we believe in the truth, the objective truth, that this is morally wrong, and we don't want kids to be exposed to that. We want to get that stuff out of there. So parents should care deeply about what is going on in schools, including homeschooling parents. Just because you're homeschooling doesn't mean that you shouldn't be caring about it. So everyone should care about that. So I really, really recommend, if you don't know that much about the public school system, to go and listen to those two episodes. In the first episode, we basically go through and just explain the whole structure of public education from the federal level all the way down to the local school level. And I learned so much. I didn't know half of what we talked about in that podcast before we got into it. So really recommend that.
Yeah, that's good. And I was just interviewing Rosaria Butterfield for my book club. and she's a homeschool mom. Her kids are not in public school, but she goes to the meetings. And she was
Yeah.
saying every Christian needs to be going to the meetings. And, I can't say that I've ever done that. So I'd be a hypocrite if I said, yeah, and go to the meetings. But I mean, Rosaria said to do it. So we should do it, right? Because we do what Rosaria
Yeah,
says.
exactly.
So, and this is kind of a question that sort of flows from that. So from Crain, my daughter, a lesbian raised in Christian church, struggling, any advice would be greatly appreciated. Crain, the reason I was looking down while Natasha was talking is because I really want to recommend you get this book from Rosaria Butterfield, because this whole book is worth the afterword. So at the end of the book, there's an afterword where she talks through very specific relational dynamics as they relate to that topic. And one of the questions is, my son and his husband want to come home for Christmas, but my other adult children, who are strong Christians, don't want them to come because they don't want to have to explain their relationship to the grandchildren. What should I do? I mean, really specific questions like that she goes into and offers some really, really, really wise advice. And of course, Rosaria, if you're unfamiliar with her story, she was living as a lesbian, a tenured professor of queer theory at Syracuse University before she became a Christian. So she really understands that community. And so I really want to recommend that book to you. But another book I want to recommend to you that's going to give you, I think, hope and lots of advice and lots of encouragement is a book called Out of a Far Country by Christopher Yuan and Angela Yuan. So Christopher was a just out and proud gay man living in Chicago. And his mom actually was interesting. And when he came out of the closet, his parents rejected him, but then they became Christians. And it was their Christianity that compelled them to accept him, not accept his life or the choices he was making, but to love him and pray for him. And Angela fasted for him once a week for years and prayed for Christopher every day. And so that book tells that story through both of their eyes. So one chapter is Angela talking about what was going on in her life and in her mind and her prayer life, while the other chapter is from Christopher talking about what he was going through in his life and how the Lord ultimately used, I think, her prayers to bring him to the Lord. And I really think that book's going to give you a lot of hope. And that's, again, called Out of a Far Country by Christopher Yuan and Angela Yuan. So definitely pick that up. Go ahead and I'll give away a second CD here. But I need to text my husband to give me another winner. Give me another winner. Text me, because he's the one who's selecting the random. I don't know if he's doing like a spinner or dice or what he's doing, but he's randomly selecting. So I'll wait until
I'll add to what you said, Elisa, while
yeah,
he's
you add to
pulling
it
up
while
the
I
winner.
wait for the winner's name.
Yeah. So I was just going to say, the answer to that question for me depends a lot on how old the daughter is. We don't know if she's still at home. Has she already, graduated and she's an adult child now? We don't know. But I would say that just the way that the question was phrased, that she was raised in church, and now she's a lesbian, it almost sounds like you feel like something went wrong in terms of, if somebody was raised in church, how could this happen? And so I just want to say, people struggle with all kinds of different sins. And so if she struggles with same-sex attraction, whether she feels like that's a struggle or it's wanted, I don't know. But I think that we have to remember that people struggle with all kinds of different things. It's really not related to whether or not you grow up in the church. I mean, there are things that there are considerations in terms of where is she at with the Lord right now? Does she want to follow Jesus, but she is struggling with his attraction? Has she completely abandoned her faith? I mean, there's so many other questions that would come up to actually respond to that. But if she's abandoned her faith completely, I would be focused on that in wanting to bring her back to the Lord, because her behaviors and the way she lives out her life, that is what will follow from having that relationship with God. And so I would be focused on that part of it. If she's still a believer and she still is a follower of Jesus, then that's a conversation about, well, what do you make of the Bible? Do you believe that the Bible is God's word? If you do, well, let's look at what the Bible says. If you don't, well, why not? What would convince you that it's God's word? Can we look at the evidence for the reliability of the Bible? So many different considerations there. We don't know all the pieces to give a full answer, but those are just a couple of things I wanted to add.
That's good. And I think, my husband suggested this, and I agree. Crain, we're just going to send this to you. You win. We said everything's random. This isn't random. I just want you to have this, Crain. I hope it ministers to you. and brings you comfort as you navigate this relationship and the dynamics of everything going on. So email us at contact@alisachilders.com with your address. We'll send that to you, and then you get an email with the code for the free downloads as well. Here's a question for me from Jenny. Love your newly released music. Thank you, Jenny. I appreciate that. Especially love your song, The Battle is the Lord's. Any plan for more music releases? I do. I don't have anything officially planned, Jenny, but I have been writing. And I could envision, if all of the things align to make it happen, I could see myself doing a hymns album. I could see myself doing a Christmas album. So I think we're definitely thinking in that way. And maybe we just do from here on out one song at a time and just release it digitally. But I do think there's going to be music in the future. So thank you for asking that, and stay tuned. And I'll also, follow me on my music pages, because that's where all of that information, I'll announce on these ones too, but on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, it's at Alisa Childers Music. So you can follow me over there as well. And occasionally, when I have time and it doesn't drop off because, we're busy, we have stuff going on, I like to also make, videos that are giving my thoughts on worship and music and stuff that's just a little bit outside of the apologetics world. Jean's question is, what homeschool curriculum would you suggest for very active second and third graders, new to homeschooling, and would appreciate any input? Appreciate your ministries. Natasha, what do you think for a homeschool curriculum?
Well, I didn't homeschool in elementary school, so I can't be really specific in answering this. I did it for middle school for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, but I would just kind of broadly say that I never picked one curriculum. I would pick and choose for every subject, and I think that that is one of the most helpful things that you can do, because if you start looking for just one package, then you get paralyzed, I think, because you're thinking, like, I have to like everything about this. And I never saw one curriculum from one publisher that it was like, oh, yes, this is exactly what I want in every single subject. So I think it is much more helpful to figure out kind of what works the best for you in terms of the different approaches and methodologies for each of those subjects. So look for, the math curricula. That in and of itself, there's a huge debate over, the best way to teach math, for example. And they go about it in some very different ways. Or what's the best way to teach reading? I mean, I would think about your kids. You said that they are very active. So maybe you're not going to want something that gets you bogged down where you have to spend a lot of time on it each day. You're going to be looking for something that moves more quickly, maybe has more entertainment, maybe is, involves more of the senses. I don't know all of the details about working with the youngest kids, but I would just encourage you to look into each subject and find the right curriculum for that, because in general, you're not going to just find one fell swoop kind of thing that you're going to do. So that would be my advice. I don't know, Alisa, I know you didn't homeschool early on either, but
well, we're only 2 years into homeschool, so this is our second year, and we've done the same thing that you've done, where we just kind of pick and choose based on the kid and based on the topic. Like here, for example, for literature, my daughter loves to read. She loves reading novels. She loves reading World War II novels, but she doesn't like to read for school. If it feels like it's for school, like a subject, then she loses her joy in reading. Now she still has to read. So
that's my daughter
reads
too.
On her own. Yeah, she reads on her own. So what I chose for her this year was a curriculum that had it was more shorter stories, but there are all sorts of excerpts from classical literature. So she's reading, one day it'll be poetry, and it'll be like a lot of American classics, and then the next day it'll be, maybe 5 to 10 pages an excerpt from a novel, from a classic novel. So she kind of gets that in her bones, and it moves more quickly, so she doesn't feel like she has to just read this whole book, for school. And then of course there's assignments based on those sections of reading, and that's been working, I think, very well for her. Whereas my son, he loves to read like graphic novels on his own, but just, reading a chapter book, he's probably not going to choose to do that, but he does it very well for school. It's time to read your chapter. He reads it, and he does his little assignment based on it, and that works well for him. So I think it's just like Natasha said, and especially if they're very active, I could just even see like science, maybe find a curriculum that has to do with bugs, and then, go on a hike every Friday and try to find the bugs you've been studying all week, or birds or something like that. And there's so much freedom with homeschooling to be able to craft it to your kids' likes and kind of how they learn. So we've really enjoyed doing that. And I will say, I've said this on the podcast a bunch of times, the curriculum I'd really recommend for Bible or apologetics would be Foundation Worldview curriculum by Elizabeth Urbanowitz for like elementary and younger. because her personality, everything is so perfect for that age group. And it's very much the Mr. Rogers approach, not the Sesame Street approach. And she's very intentional about that, where it doesn't lend itself to a short attention span. But like my son loves it. And he, watches Miss Elizabeth do her little teaching. And then it's so good the way she's got it set up. So that's Foundation Worldview curriculum for apologetics and worldview. It's just fantastic. We use that. I use that with my son, and we just absolutely love it. Okay, couple more questions, and then we're about out of time, and we're going to do another giveaway, and then we'll give away those tickets. So again, if you want tickets for Detroit, then put in the comments, I want Detroit tickets. This is like your last chance, okay? Last chance. I want Detroit tickets. If you want Pittsburgh tickets, I want Pittsburgh tickets. We got to see that in the comments for you to be entered to win those tickets, because we're going to do that in about 2 or 3 minutes. But I have a fun little giveaway before that. So question from Jeff and Sherry. Ladies, what has been the hardest challenge you have had to answer? I'd have to think about that one.
Yeah.
I think, and there's a general type of challenge that's difficult for me to answer. It's the ones that are the what about. And what I mean by that is often people will say, well, what about this? And then you'll answer that, well, what about that? And it's like they're not really caring if you're addressing this, like a specific question. They're just trying to find the hole in whatever you're saying. And that's just not enjoyable. I don't enjoy those very much. But I'll keep thinking if there's something specific. Like, can you think of something that you've
Well,
had a
I
hard time
think
answering?
I think that the hardest challenges to answer are the ones that maybe you feel yourself, because there's some things, that people will throw at you, and maybe it's a difficult challenge, but it's not something that you really grapple with, that you don't find to be a struggle for yourself. And so you just kind of learn how to answer it, and you know what to do with it. But sometimes they hit closer to home. And so an example for me would be the kinds of questions that are like, why would the God of the Old Testament, as people sometimes say, why would he do this or that? Not so much like the Canaanites. I know that one comes up all the time. I can answer that one. But I think that a lot of times, especially like when you read the prophets and do all the minor prophets, the things that God says, sometimes you just read that and you go, wow, this is crazy. Like, God said that? That's so harsh. Like, this is so, it's difficult to read. And I've been reading a lot of the prophets in the last couple of months. And so that's top of mind for me. So when people do ask about that, I mean, I feel that. I understand what they mean. And, we have to talk about how God is the same in the Old Testament and in the New Testament. Jesus is God. And so, of course, there's this continuity. But at the same time, sometimes when you read what God says in the Old Testament and parts of it, you just go, wait, this sounds so crazy. Like, to think that the God of the universe is using this kind of language, is saying these kinds of things. And so, so sometimes I find that harder to answer, because I totally get it when people say that. I feel that too. Fortunately, because I've learned so much in terms of apologetics, and I don't mean that in an obnoxious way. I just mean because I've studied this so much, I feel completely confident in the truth of Christianity, because I can go back and remind myself of all the evidence of God's existence and all the evidence for the reliability of the Bible and for the resurrection, and I can go through all these things in my head. But at the end of the day, if I didn't have all that, I would look at the way that God sounds in parts of the Old Testament and go, wait a second, this sounds really crazy. So that's part of why apologetics has been very helpful for me personally.
I love that. I'm texting my husband details. Sorry. Okay. All right. Going to do a giveaway now. This is a product that I think this is lucky, like someone this is a lucky winner who's going to get this, and that's a pound of 7 Weeks coffee. So 7 Weeks is a company. I know this is very hard for me to part with this. I really don't want to give this to you.
Coffee is important.
This is such good coffee. I really my sin nature wants to hoard this and just keep it for myself. But
you are so godly and generous. That is what we're establishing.
I'm going to give this pound of 7 Weeks coffee. Now, let me tell you a little bit about this. 7 Weeks is not sponsoring this particular live stream tonight. This is just me telling you that I love this company. They are a sponsor on my podcast, and that's how I kind of got to know them. But 7 Weeks Coffee is a pro-life Christian coffee company, and they give 10% of every sale to pregnancy care centers all across America. They've given over $200,000 cumulatively. And the reason they're called 7 weeks is because at 7 weeks of development, a baby is the size of a coffee bean. So that's kind of how you remember that. And that's also when the baby's heartbeat is first detectable. So I'm going to send, and it's so good, you guys. This is like, it's mold-free. It's better than organic. It's shade-grown direct trade, which is more ethical than fair trade. Small batch roast. It's so good. It's just good. And I'm a coffee snob, and I love it. So I am going to I'm going to part with my precious pound of 7 weeks coffee, and that is going to Jackie Sterling. Jackie, you get the 7 weeks coffee. I know. Jackie Sterling. All right, Jackie, email us, contact@alisachilders.com. Give us your address, and we will send you out this. Or if you don't drink coffee and you know somebody who you'd like to give it to, just send us their address, and we'll send it to them. So Jackie Sterling, contact@alisachilders.com. Give us your address, and we'll get that sent out to you. All right, we have winners. We have winners for Pittsburgh and for Detroit. So, Natasha, I'm going to let you announce Detroit, but I'll do Pittsburgh first. So, are you guys ready? Drum roll, everybody. The winner of the Pittsburgh tickets is Christine Brunetti.
Woohoo!
Christine. All right, Christine, you got the Pittsburgh tickets. So we didn't talk about this, Natasha. How do they redeem these? Do we know? Or should they just email the contact?
Email the information, and then when the tickets are available, then we will send you the code that you need in order to get registered.
Okay,
So
perfect.
just
So
same thing as
Christine,
everybody else. Yeah.
yeah, email me at contact@alisachilders.com and remind me that you won the Pittsburgh tickets, and then we will be in contact about how you'll get your code to get those for free. All right, and now we have Detroit, and Detroit is going to Wendy D. Wendy D, you got Detroit.
Woo!
All right, Wendy D, same thing. Email us at contact@alisachilders.com, and we will be in contact with you about how you can redeem those tickets. Okay, I think that's it. Anything else from you, Natasha?
Is there anything else we should give away? I feel like I should just start grabbing stuff around me.
I know. I have.
We already talked about, the
I
bad
have, what do I
ornaments
have?
and
A remote control I could give someone. Maybe a dirty makeup brush over here, but I don't think anybody probably wants that.
I don't think they do. I think that's about it.
All right.
I hope you guys enjoyed the live stream tonight. Thanks for joining us, and hope everybody has a Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
And I don't think we've established an actual week we're going to be back with the podcast, have we, Alisa?
No, but we will
soon, after the new year.
As we can. Yes.
January.
Yes, just sometime in January. Okay, so be looking at that. And if you haven't subscribed to the audio podcast, now is a great time to do it, because when we release that first episode, you'll get a notification. So definitely subscribe to the Unshaken Faith podcast. Go to Amazon or wherever books are sold, order The Deconstruction of Christianity, then go to the deconstructionofchristianity.com, fill out the form, you'll get your pre-order bonuses. Anything you want to announce going on in your world, Natasha, about how people can connect with you personally, maybe, or any of that good stuff?
It'll be a while before I have the book to promote, so not yet on that one, but I will have a lot more episodes coming out on my own podcast, Natasha Crain podcast, in the new year, so go ahead and subscribe to that also. Make sure you are subscribed to both of our individual podcasts as well as the Unshaken Faith, so that you can get notified when new episodes are out. And I mean, you guys hear us talking about this online if you follow us on social media, but social media is harder and harder in terms of the algorithms and not showing as many people the posts that we do. And so, yes, we post about our new episodes, but fewer and fewer people actually see that a lot of times. So it's helpful to us if you don't depend on the social media aspect of it and you subscribe directly on your podcast player. So then you just get the notifications. So please go ahead and do that. That would be your Christmas present to us.
Yes, you can wish us a Merry Christmas by subscribing to the podcast. So that's awesome. All right. Well, God bless you guys. Have a Merry Christmas, and we'll see you after the new year. Bye-bye.